Hey guys, before we jump into it, I want to say thank you for those of you who backed Curse Risen. Yesterday was the first day, and this is the first time I've done a crowdfunder where it jumped off like this on the first day. If you like bad girl comics or urban fantasy with a little bit of spice to it, check it out. And this is not for the kiddies, this is for us grown-ups. Link is in the description. Let's jump into this video. Hey guys, Nathan Brendan Masters here with some money-saving tips for comic book artists or artists who are thinking about getting into comics and want to do it traditionally. You're going to want to get the proper paper, and the Bristol board is what everybody uses. I'm going to say you may want to you may want to rethink that if you're a newcomer, especially if you're self-publishing. If you're a pro and you're working for Marvel or DC or the big companies, this may not apply to you. But let's talk about this real quick. So the Bristol everybody uses is obviously Strathmore. That's the Bristol that most professionals use. It handles everything. The next up, of course, is this. This is the Canson Bristol board, which is actually more expensive than the Strathmore. Now, if you're a penciler, you probably like this. It's got a nice texture to it. I actually like the lines in this better because I just think the board is lined more. And if you look here, the internal lines are a lot thinner and a lot softer. So you don't really have a lot of problem when you're scanning this paper. You just scan it and you can knock those blue lines right out. So I like that. But this is not the paper that I'm going to talk about because, as I said before, this is actually more expensive than the Strathmore paper. And excuse the shaking because I'm doing this on my small table on the bed, and I just kind of had this idea and wanted to do it real quick. So there's that. So excuse the shaking. Now, I've also talked about this brand. This is Eon paper. A lot of people buy it in lieu of buying Strathmore because Eon has a reputation for consistency. Even though Strathmore is pretty much industry standard, it's also said to sometimes not be consistent. You can get a bad batch here or there, and obviously you won't know until you actually use it. Now, the thing about Eon is thinner inks tend to bleed on it. So you want to use Eon's Vortex ink or some form of Sumi like the Yasutomo or Zig ink, or you could use something like the De La Rowney Pro Black, which is a very thick ink and goes down very nicely. But what about some paper that handles all of this stuff equally well, but it's cheaper than all of these? It has a bit of tooth, but you can ink on it with no problem, and it handles everything from pencils to ink wash, no problem. So let's look at this paper right now. I'm going to draw some lines on it with the Hunt 102 nib, which is the one most likely to get caught up in fibers as it's the thinnest one. The ink being used here is Blick Black Cat, so it's about as thin as many of the other inks used for comics. It's also an inexpensive choice for up-and-comers. And as you can see, there's no problem inking on this board. The pen isn't getting caught up. It's smooth enough for inks, toothy enough for pencils. But what if you want to use something thinner, such as carbon black, which is known to be a very dark ink, but it also is very thin. In fact, it's thin enough that it's considered fountain pen safe. It would look very good on the Eon paper, but it might also bleed. I've had decent luck with it in an ink brush on Eon paper, but not so much with the dip pen. Let's see what happens here. And there you have it. One thing I will say about this paper though is that the ink will stand up on it and it'll take maybe a little bit more time to dry than normal, but it's going to look great. Just keep this in mind though, so you don't smear the ink. You know how like sometimes you're drawing and you'll put your hand down and you smear it, and different inks of course have different drying times. You know how that goes. The next ink up is an actual fountain pen ink, and that is Pelikan 4001 Brilliant Black. I always shake this up before I use it to be sure to get the blackest line. Some people have reported that this ink is more of a dark gray. I don't really have a problem with it. I always use it for line work. I don't use it for brush work. Now, I'm having a bit of trouble with the focus here, but it will come into focus and you will see what it looks like. There you go. You'll see that there's no bleeding. I didn't turn off my autofocus for in case people are wondering what the heck's going on. So I'll remember to do that next time I do one of these videos. But let's grab a brush real quick and do a little bit of ink wash. Let's see how this paper handles that. It's just a little bit of ink wash here, and not only how the ink wash goes on, but how it dries. Let's take a look there. Just gonna do this very quickly, and here it is after it dried. Went down very smooth. You can see it right here. So this is what this paper looks like with ink wash. So let's just go ahead and do some brush strokes with ink. Again, we're going to be using carbon black for this. And let me actually dip it in there a little bit more. There we go. And there you have it. This paper is handling it with no problem whatsoever. It's just going on nice. Watch it dry. And I guarantee you, you're going to be surprised at what this paper is. At least a lot of you will be. Some of you might already know this. So for the reveal, this is Canson XL watercolor paper, the backside. As you probably know, the front is cold press. And while not as pronounced as some paper, it does indeed have a cold press texture, which is the side that you would do watercolor on. And this is a nice texture also for if you're doing pencil work, you might want this kind of texture. But the back is a hot press texture, which means it's good for drawing and ink wash and all the stuff you just saw me do. But so what? Why bring any of this up at all? Well, this paper is almost always cheaper than Bristol. Right now it's $15 on Amazon and it's not even on sale. The Canson Bristol is $17.52 and you're only getting 25 pages. Plus, the Canson watercolor paper is actually 300 GSM, while the Bristol is only 260. But that's a pretty common weight. Even the Strathmore is just 270, and both of them are 100-pound Bristol. And if you don't know what that means, this paper comes in rolls, and a standard roll of the paper is 100 pounds. And if you just need those lines on your paper, it's going to cost you 25 bucks, which is roughly what I paid for it at Blick, so the price is pretty much consistent. Eon's board is 120 pounds, so it's a little bit heavier, but it's going to cost you $14 a pack. You're going to be paying $28 to get 2 packs plus shipping. Eon does make 100-pound paper. It's $10.99, so you're going to be paying again about 22 bucks. And of course, shipping. So I have bought their pre-ruled paper when they have sales, but in the future, I'll probably be buying the blanks and printing my own border on it. And that's the best deal if you have an 11x17 printer or a non-photo blue pencil and the ruler. In the Joe Kubert School, they charge roughly 27 bucks for their paper, and you're going to be paying about 30 bucks to get it with tax and shipping. And this is just Strathmore 400 series Bristol with their blue line printed on it. And you are only going to get 20 sheets. But that brings me to this. If you look at the image area of their paper, it's 10 by 15. The Canson watercolor paper is 11 by 15. You can take an inch off the side with an X-Acto knife or take it to Kinko's and have them hack the side off, and you will have 10 by 15. And if you want to do a bleed, well, you just draw on the whole page. Simple. And here's another thing. If you're brush inking and you're using ink wash, you might as well use the front of the page. All right, guys, so that's it for me. I do have affiliate links in the description. If you want any of this stuff, I will also link to the Eon Productions page for their paper, as well as the Joe Kubert School. But something tells me if you're looking at this video, you're probably you're probably not rich. But hey, you know, everybody has a thing that works for them, and we don't always feel like doing the same thing. So the reason I have so many different types of paper, so much, so much ink, I do different things at different times. I might get some of that Joe Kubert paper just to have, what's considered the best. That 400 Strathmore is considered the best. You know what I mean? That Eon paper, I get that sometimes just to have that really good paper. That's what I feel sometimes. You know what I mean? I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have access to get the kind of art equipment and the materials that I want, not to mention having access to digital art and AI. So, I can switch it up how I want, but some people out there are hurting for cash, and this might be a thing for them. You get more paper for less price. Like I say, this paper is frequently on sale. You can stock up if you catch it. You use what you can get when you can get it. So other than that, guys, you take it easy. Nathan Brendan Masters. Thank you again for those who backed the project. I got a lot more stuff to come. Hasta.
Don't look back, we're here to stay. A life we knew would come one day. And this is it, the borderline to where the future